What's up, everybody? Luke from Fisherman's Warehouse here, and today I want to talk to you guys about my trip I just made down to the desert. I fished 2 tournaments down there. I fished a BAM Super 60 and then the Wand Bass tournament at Lake Havasu. That Super 60 was at Mojave. So anyway, started off down there at Lake Mojave. It's one of my favorite lakes to fish. I've been going there for a couple of years now. This was my 4th time, I believe, on that body of water. So I had a general plan of what I was going to do heading down there. This time of the year, Lake Mojave is really clear. So, I mean, I'm talking a lot clearer than our typical California lakes that we have that a lot of us are familiar with. It's not 10 or 15 feet clear. It was, 25, 35 feet of visibility, which is pretty insane when you can look out of the side of your boat. And I've said this before, but I've literally seen, a catfish and a bass swimming next to each other in 35 feet of water, and you can count the whiskers on the catfish. So it's a little bit of an intimidating fishery, and especially if you've never been there before, I know that can be something that's kind of scary, especially if you've never even fished a body of water where it was that clear. So I have a handful of baits here, a handful of just general tips that I've learned for these kind of desert lakes that I wanted to pass along to you guys. So we'll jump straight into what I was throwing down there at Lake Mojave. I keep it really simple at Lake Mojave. It's a very clear water lake, like I was saying, and it's very dominated by the forward-facing sonar, especially in the tournament setting, which is what, obviously I was there to do. So if you don't have forward-facing sonar, no worries. You can still catch them on these baits, but it's going to help you out a lot at that lake if you do have it, just because they don't have the population of fish that these Northern California fisheries have. You're fishing for a lot fewer fish in those desert lakes than you do compared to up here. So one bait that I took down there, I knew this was going to be a killer just because I've caught a lot on it before. It's just a small drop shot bait. So my choice right now on this event, I used that scope shad. I used a 3-inch, and I just keep it really simple on that lake. I throw green pumpkin a lot. Green pumpkin seems to be tried and true color, obviously everywhere, but especially in these desert lakes, you don't need to get into a lot of your shad patterns or anything like that. You can keep it as simple as green pumpkin. I know a lot of guys are a fan of like a black color too. So anyways, I just go green pumpkin, rig that thing up on a really small drop shot hook. I always like the Owner mosquito hook. I'm throwing either a size 4 or right here I have a size 6. Like I was saying, that water's super clear, so sizing down a lot of your gear is going to be crucial to getting 1 or 2 more bites. If you're out there fun fishing, you're not too worried about it, you can use a little bit heavier stuff, but in the tournament setting, if you want to get that extra bite, if you want to catch those really smart 5+ pound smallmouth or 4+ pound smallmouth, you've got to absolutely dial in your gear. So throwing a smaller light wire drop shot hook like that number 6 mosquito hook helps you maybe put 1 or 2 more fish in over the course of a week, but those could be your difference makers. Altogether, I wrapped that all up with the Sunline shooter. I was throwing anywhere from a 7 or 8 pound test. I do every now and then dabble into the 6 pound category, but it felt like they were eating that 7 just as good as anything else, so I pretty much stuck with a 7. One of the things on those bodies of water too is I really like to throw a bit of a longer leader. So a lot of the times when I tie a spinning rod combo up and I'm on a braid setup, I'll usually just tie a 8-10 foot leader maybe, just because a lot of our lakes aren't that clear. But in this desert situation, I was often tying like a 20+ foot leader just to give myself a lot more, invisibility when I was fishing for these fish that have such good eyesight down there. So anyways, that was kind of my basic setup for Mojave. I mean, I kept it really simple, literally just took the drop shot down there. I worked in some other baits, tried the minnow, tried a swim bait, all that kind of stuff, but it just seemed like the drop shot was tried and true. It was working, and especially in that tournament setting, we get no practice, so it's like if you know you're going to catch them on it, just throw it. So that was really fun. If you guys are looking to go to Mojave, I really recommend going in a little bit more of that fall time though. That water gets a little bit dirtier on that lake, and it kind of opens you up to a lot of different ways to fish. You could throw topwater, reaction baits, you could still catch them on the finesse stuff. But overall, super fun trip. And just a really quality smallmouth fishery. If you guys have never been there, I definitely recommend it. So after that trip, there was a wand bass the following week, so I decided to just stay down there in the desert, hang out some more, and fish the wand bass on Lake Havasu. So I had never actually been to Havasu before. A ton of people told me, they're like, dude, you'll love it, you gotta go. You can pick up a flipping stick, you can frog them, you can throw a deep crank, you can chatterbait, and you can do all the fun stuff, right? And of course, I show up that week and everybody's like, dude, they just got done spawning. They're all just pulled off the bank, and like you can catch them cranking, doing something like that, but they're not on the toolie lines. You're not gonna catch them flipping. You're not gonna catch them frogging. I'm like, all right, awesome, how cool. So anyways, I got to do another ultra finesse tournament and throw a drop shot for 3 days in a row, which is what I did. But, it was still fun to catch a lot of fish down there. So on the drop shot, I kept it super simple. I'm throwing 2 different Roboworm colors. They're kind of the desert tried and trues. I literally just picked these out of the box because I've heard so many people in those desert fisheries throwing these 2 colors, and sure enough, they work great. Oxblood Red Flake, I know that's kind of a staple up here too. A lot of people like that color. But this one, a little bit funkier. It's that orange crusher color. So it's kind of like an oxbloody color on top, and then you got that orange bottom on it. So something pretty bright. But I was throwing those 2 baits, and I was targeting. It was a really interesting bite actually. For throwing a drop shot, I was using my live scope to basically find balls of fry. So these fish had just gone up, they had spawned, done their thing, and they had pulled off the bank with all their fry. And what they do on that lake, I guess, which, I'd never really seen something quite like this, with all those artificial fish habitats they have in there, or the cages, whatever you want to call them, they're like those big structures they dump in there to help, basically boost fish populations. But those bass will take their fry out to those cages. So you'd literally just be like panning around on your live scope, you'd find a cage, and then you'd see this ball of fry floating on top of it. And it was pretty dumb fishing when I had first showed up. It's like if you saw a ball of fry, you could throw anything into the middle of it, and like the second your bait hits it, you're seeing this like rocket ship come up from below it, and they're eating whatever it was, drop shot, jig, didn't matter. As the tournament went on, of course, it's super obvious bite. Everybody was doing it, and those fish just got so pressured. So really mixing in a handful of different baits in order to get those fish to bite, whether it was just different colors that guys probably weren't throwing, or throwing a couple different baits in there. Another one I used a lot too was just a Keitech, just a finesse football jig. So I was throwing a lot lighter of a jig. I was throwing like a 1/4 ounce. Now the reason for that is those cages are just gnarly, some of them. So you'd throw in there, and it's like you really had to have a lighter bait that you could kind of feather through those cages in order to not get snagged. So I was throwing, just those little teeny tiny Keitech jigs, something small, something finesse, but it did get me a handful of bites, and some pretty good ones, to be honest. And I know I said I never got any fun bites. I kind of lied. I did get like 1 or 2 bites on the frog, and just general rule, we're finally getting into frog season. So I know we've got a ton in stock here. The Gavacho, I was throwing this one, throwing Snag proof, didn't matter. Did get a handful of bites on that. So it's always fun when you can, throw a braid rod and catch a few, but I know we're just rolling into the season here. I mean, the Delta's going to be popping off, Clear Lake's going to be popping off. So that was kind of just a side note. Get your frogs while you can before we start selling out of those things. But another key thing for me, like I was talking about, those artificial fish habitats that they have built in that lake are something that we don't ever really run into in California. So, and we don't have a lot of structure that's anything like it. So something that I had to do that week in order to make sure that I was efficient and wasn't breaking off that much was really change up my drop shot, throw something weedless, and there are 2 hooks that really helped me out here. So the owner cover shot, it's your classic Texas rig drop shot hook. I was throwing that thing if I just wanted to kind of, straight or Texas rig my Roboworms. The other one, I was throwing that owner sniper finesse weedless. So if I wanted a wacky presentation, this thing's awesome because it's got these little titanium weed guards that stick out from it. So you can throw right into the dead middle of that cage. You could shake your bait through, and it was going to come out every single time, no problem. And pretty much wrapped all that stuff up same way. Sunline shooter. I threw 7 to 8 pound just because Again, I was fishing around a lot of structure. They do have zebra mussels in that lake, so having a little bit heavier line that was pretty abrasion resistant was a really key thing to getting those fish out of those cages when you did get a bite. And finally, the last thing that I did manage to catch a few fish on, one of the more fun ways to catch them for sure was doing some deep cranking. I was throwing a Megabass deep 6. I was throwing gizzard shad, just basically any shad pattern. That's one of the things with Lake Havasu. They do have gizzard shad in there, so those fish are really used to chasing down a bigger bait, so you can get away with some of your bigger crankbaits like that deep 6. Make sure you change out your treble hooks, and again, wrap that all up with a very abrasion resistant line. I was throwing that Crank FC. It's made for cranking, so this is one of the cool things that Sunline makes that I've really fallen in love with, just because it's extremely abrasion resistant and it also has a lot of line stretch into it. So I've talked about it a lot of times. When you're cranking, you want to have stretch in your setup. That way the fish or your line and your overall setup rod, all that kind of stuff, absorbs a lot of that fish's power. So having the extra stretch in your line, almost like a monofilament, but with an extremely, abrasion resistant line like a fluorocarbon, pick up some Sunline crank for that. Overall, super fun trip to the desert. If you guys are looking to get any of this stuff, make sure you swing by Fisherman's Warehouse, whether it's in-store or online. We've got all this stuff, so much more. If you want to take a trip to the desert, taking a trip to Clear Lake, taking a trip to the ocean, taking a trip to the High Sierras, we've got everything for all of those fisheries and many more. So make sure you check us out, and we'll get you hooked up for your next fishing adventure.